Increasingly apparent that improving air quality in our region and fighting against climate change is not an isolated issue that can be separated from other aspects of our environment or separated from aspects of the social, economic, and political environment either. Well, when a law is passed that makes it more difficult to vote for low-income families, minorities, students, the elderly, the disabled, the working poor, and women, whose problem is that? It's our problem. That's right. Not only is it morally reprehensible to prevent people from voting, but it prevents a fair election from taking place, and mostly it tilts it in favor of the people who are polluting our air, for one thing. When public employees are denied the right of collective bargaining in North Carolina, and when labor unions are discouraged and hindered by backwards so-called right-to-work laws, and as a result, wages throughout the state are kept at substandard levels, and working families are barely subsisting so they don't have time to think about or act on social, political, or environmental concerns because it's all they can do to put food on the table, pay the rent, and if they're lucky, pay for health care expenses, whose problem is that? It's our problem, yes.
Postal Workers Union, which I belong, is boycotting Staples. So if any of you shop at Staples, there's information left on the table about a boycott. We want you to send the CEO of that a letter. What they're doing, they want to move certain units of the post office, shut down the post offices that serve the communities and move them into Staples units, which is the first step of privatizing the Postal Service. So that's big for the Postal Service. I've also left you information on the table, and I'm sorry I probably didn't bring enough. But Social Security. Social Security is nowhere near broke. It affects each and every one of us at some time. And they're trying to privatize it and get the money. They want to put that money in Wall Street, and each one of us here knows what happens when that happens. So you're going to have to fight for your Social Security. That's the two big issues. And for the union, here are the four major issues that we're fighting on a national scale, but they also turn into a state scale and a local scale. Immigration reform. Folks, they want to demonize these people that are coming over here, and they're just trying to find a job. The immigration system is not enforced, and the immigration system is corrupt in Mexico, and it's corrupt over here. Employers hire illegal aliens or illegal immigrants to get their work services. They don't pay them overtime, and when they got them in there, they threaten deportation to send them back. That's where we all lose, because we need people to work over here. We need our factories back. Trade. You've all seen NAFTA and the trade agreements that are coming out, and we've got TPP, the Pacific, and TIIP, I think, the European trade agreements. Even President Obama, and I love him to death, he tries for us hard, but he wants power to implement some of these trade agreements, and even Bill Clinton was on NAFTA. Trade agreements don't work unless people are held accountable for them. And accountability means our Congress and those who start these trade agreements. We need American manufacturing back here in the United States, and we need it in North Carolina. Third, which is one of the biggest issues, is raising the minimum wage. Folks, the minimum wage bill that's been on the table since 2013 and they won't agree on brings the minimum wage up to $10.10. If you make $7.25, and my son does, working at a cafeteria in Asheville, You make $15,080 a year. That's below the poverty line. We can do better. This country was built to do better, and we can. We can't let it get destroyed. Moving with inflation, if the 725 would have moved with inflation, we would be making $10.65 as a minimum wage. It never moved. But the scary part is, one of the biggest industries that's growing are service industries. Waitresses, waiters, you know. What's the minimum wage? Does anybody know what it is for a service industry worker? $2.13. And that hadn't moved since 1991. And some can do good on it in your higher class restaurants, and some can in your lower class. And those people are trying to live on it. 5 of the 6 fastest growing sectors of the American economy are low wage industries: home health aides, customer service reps, food prep and serving workers, personal and home, can't even read my writing, I'm getting so old myself, and retail sales workers. And that's what we're seeing here in Western North Carolina. Our factories are leaving. Inca, with 2,000-3,000 union workers, gone. Cranston, gone. Ball Brothers, gone. We've got major employers, and I'm going to make a list of them. Acosta, Cranston, you can just keep on going, but we have lost so much manufacturing, which equalizes the scale. And some of them were union and some of them weren't, but they were good paying jobs and not service industry jobs to serve others for little to nothing. So we need to raise those service job standards, plus we need to bring manufacturing back to North Carolina. And last but not least is extended unemployment benefits, which expired 12/28/13. If you've went around and watched any of these moral movies, and I think another one's coming to Asheville, but these people, it's not only they lose their jobs, but when they try to find a job, a comparable job wage is not there. They take a lower wage job and they can't make it. So not only have we got unemployed, we've got underemployed. And these people are really hurting and they need help and they're not willing to give it. We can finance wars, we can finance trade agreements, we can spend untold millions in every direction except for the American people. This will be the deciding year at the polls. That's what we can do as Americans. Go to the polls. Republican or Democrat, I don't even believe the Republicans are happy with what's going on now. If you remember elections in Western North Carolina, I think it was Bill Hendon and Jamie Clark. Remember those elections? Every year they'd swap out. That's how close the two parties were, because the parties were for the people. One was progressive and one was accountability, more or less, and we need both. But it's changed. It's an all-out war between the parties. They don't talk, they don't move, and we're the ones that get hurt. So it is time to change, and I hope you stand with all working people, and let's change this country this year.
Now the leader of our state, I think it's 1958. Bring it back, old Jim Crow, passing laws to the rest of the world. Keep your eye on that pride. Oh, keep your eyes on that pride.
Good enough for the last 6 years, pretty extensively. And tonight I thought I would talk about two things. One are some of the changes that are going to come about because of the new voting law. And then I also want to tell you what we have planned for the fall and as for voter registration drives. There are quite a few changes to the voter law, and the one that's going to cause the most trouble is not going to happen this year, thank goodness. It's the requirement that everybody have a valid photo ID to be able to vote. And this year, when you go to vote, they will ask you if you have one, but they won't require it. If you voted in the primary, you've probably already been asked that. But by 2016, we've got to figure out how to get everybody with a voter ID, and it's not going to be easy, let me tell you, particularly with the students. The issue that will affect us this year a lot is we used to have something called One Stop, where you could go and register to vote and vote the same day. And it was used very much by students, by low-income people, because it was just so much easier to do that. Well, you can't do that anymore, where every bit of the voter registration is going to have to occur before the 10th of October, even though the election is not till November the 4th. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on us to get everybody registered early, and also to convince students that they can't go and register because they're used to doing that, you know, in their home counties. So mainly we just need to inform about that. Another change is that we can't do straight party voting anymore, which won't bother us too much, but we got a lot of people to vote who only knew the top of the ticket, students, low information voters, people like that. And a lot of times they would just go ahead and pull that lever, and that's not going to happen anymore. So once again, we need to educate people about offices all the way down the ticket, not just at the top. Another change, which is just annoying to me, is that we used to be able to register pre-register 16 and 17-year-olds, and the high schools were doing this, and that's no longer possible. If you're 17, you can register if you're going to be 18 by November the 4th. So that's just a very picky thing. There's some little wallet cards over on the table, which I'm sure there's enough for everybody to have one. And there's a summary of the basic changes in the laws. There are more things, but they're kind of, you know, smaller things. But I urge everybody to come over and get one of those to take with you. What we're going to be doing in the fall is lots of voter registration. And for us, that frequently means Western Carolina University students. And the reason that it means that is because they are an untapped pool of unregistered voters. Every year, the freshmen come in, and most of them have either never registered to vote, or the sophomores have registered somewhere else and they want to change. And so we will register many, many voters at WCU. We usually start this after Labor Day, and that only gives us a little more than a month to do the registration. The reason we do this is because student addresses are so important. They are the most likely thing to be challenged at the polls. So Western and the Board of Elections have been working all spring to come up with what we're going to use for student addresses. They've come up with the 911 addresses. So we don't want to do students too early because they won't know what their dorm is and that sort of thing, but then we're going to hit it really hard. And what we normally do is we do voter registration several days a week in several locations on campus. And it takes a lot of people to do that. And I'm hoping tonight that we might pick up a few people who would have an interest in this and have usually a time slot of about 3 hours once or twice a week, that you can do the same slot so we don't have to have a special person to do scheduling all the time. And if you do have any interest in this, please see me afterwards and I'll be happy to take your information. We'll do some voter registration training in August. So you'll know just what you're doing. You'll be very confident. And it's actually fun to work with the students. It's not all WCU. We will do registration here at the library a couple of days a week. We'll do registration at the Senior Center and a few more locations around. And of course, if you know anybody who is not registered to vote, we have some forms right up on this table that I would like for you to take with you. And if there's anybody here who's not registered, then the same would apply. Also, if you have an address change since the last time you registered, we can do that for you also. So I hope that we'll get some good help this fall, and it's going to be a big job, but it's really important for us to do that. Thank you.
So, I was thinking about what I was going to say to y'all, and I was thinking about all the bad things that come with fracking and the poisoned well water and the leak in wells and all that stuff, and I thought, y'all probably already know all this if you're showing up to the Canary Coalition sing-along, so I wasn't going to go into that stuff too much, and I was going to focus more on what we're trying to do about fracking in this general area. Somebody let it slip that they were going to look at some rocks in our neighborhood, and I started trying to pay attention to the news, and I didn't hear anything else about it, and finally they came out and they said, oh, we're going to spend $11,000 testing these rocks, and Avram and the Canary Coalition were kind enough to work with HBO to get the rights to Gasland Part 2 that we showed here in the Jackson County Library, and we showed over in the library in Swain County, and we're going to show a few more times. And I'm really grateful to Avram and to everybody who's a part of the Canary Coalition to have made that possible. So coming up, there's going to be an organizing meeting down in Andrews on July 12th. So anybody in that community who wants to get involved and keep the well water good, maybe not get stuck in a forced pool where your property rights get taken away and your neighbors are deciding whether or not they're going to be fracking 2 miles down under the ground under your house. Anybody in the Andrews area in July 12th is welcome to come to that one. Swain County, we're having another meeting July 15th at the library over there. July 24th at the Fine Arts Center, we're looking at showing Gasland Part 1. And then as a follow-up, August 11th at the Nantahala Brewery Tap Room in Bryson City, we're looking at showing Gasland Part 2 again. And then those two screenings fall right in the public comment period for the rules that the Mining and Energy Commission has been writing about how they're going to go about doing fracking. Rules that were basically written by fracking industry lobbyists. And so, between July 15th and September 15th, you can go to the Mining and Energy Commission's website and submit your comments on the rules that they've adopted from industry lobbyists to govern us. They're having some hearings out in the middle of the state. And I don't know why they didn't think they should have one out here. They're testing our rocks. So the rules are going to affect us when they come out here to drill. And they didn't seem to think we would have anything to say about it. So they didn't give us a hearing yet. You're welcome to pick up a flyer over on the table. It says where to send letters to the Mining and Energy Commission to ask them to give us a hearing so that we can have our say about the rules that govern us like you're supposed to have in a democracy. And then that's what we got on the plate so far as I know. So I really appreciate y'all giving me the time to talk about some of the work that we're doing to try and have some good drinking water. Thank you.
Everything turn. The season turn. And time for every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together.
question has been risen, what does corporate personhood have to do with fracking, or what does corporate personhood have to do with nuclear meltdowns? What does corporate personhood have to do with the diminishment of unions? So I'd like to take just a few minutes to just really illustrate the point as to why it is that corporate personhood means so much to corporations, and why corporate personhood is such a problem for us as people. Why is it that we have to keep fighting these fights over and over and over and over and over again? These fights should have been put to sleep long, long ago. But we keep fighting them because corporations have to make money. And yes, corporations are the reason that we have wars, primarily. It wasn't intended to be this way. Our founding fathers were not ignorant about corporations. They knew about corporations. In fact, most of the 13 colonies were actually corporations. North Carolina was a corporation. It wasn't just a colony, it was a corporation. And it was run by and controlled by a corporate board in London. So our founding fathers knew about corporations. It was no accident that they did not mention corporations in the Constitution. They did not mention corporations in the Constitution because they knew that corporations were an entity that was created and knew that they were not people. The Constitution was written for people. And that is why corporate personhood is extraordinarily important for corporations. And they have been trying to get those human rights for a long, long time. The first incident was actually in 1819 in a case that was brought by Dartmouth College versus Woodward. And this turned a corporate charter from a government chartered entity into a contract. And this was the first time in the United States history that corporations had access to the Constitution. By becoming a contract entity, they first had access to the Constitution. So that was their toehold into our democracy. And all throughout the rest of our history, they've kept trying to do that. But the big case came in 1886, and it was Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. That ruling did not actually state that corporations are persons, but in a footnote that was written by a junior legal assistant said that corporations are persons. And ever since this ruling, even though the courts didn't rule that way, this ruling has been used as a precedent to give corporations more and more power. After the passage of this, after this ruling, after this 1886 ruling, there were 250 or so cases brought by corporations utilizing the 14th Amendment as a standing to gain rights throughout these various different rulings. That was just in one decade, and that's all of the courts, not just the Supreme Court. And though the 14th Amendment was written to give African Americans the right of citizenship, there were only 5 cases in that following decade brought on behalf of African Americans, as opposed to 250 brought on behalf of corporate persons. So you can see how important personhood is to corporations, just from that one decade. In 1906, Howe versus Hinckley, the court granted corporations search and seizure protections. That's our 4th Amendment right. And with Howe versus Hinckley, corporations had the right and protection of the 4th Amendment just like we do as humans. In 1919, Dodge versus Ford, the Michigan Supreme Court declared that a business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. And this gave stockholders primacy in all of our establishments. Prior to that, corporations were actually seen as public entities that were there for the benefit of communities. Ever since 1919, their sole entire purpose has been profit. And so from that point on, corporations, though they are persons, they have had no reason to have any ethics, no morals. They have no reason to exist now other than to make a profit. In 1922, Pennsylvania Coal versus Mahon, corporations gained the Fifth Amendment right, that is important to them in the takings clause. And this is very important to corporations, and they are using it now, particularly in the fracking cases. Even though the New York Supreme Court just recognized that localities can make laws prohibiting fracking, corporations can still sue the local entities for taking profits from them. And that's based upon the 1922 ruling and based upon the fact that they now have the Fifth Amendment right. In 1976, Buckley versus Vallejo, corporations were actually first given the right to spend as much money as they want to in the political process. So it really was not Citizens United that made money free speech, but it was actually back in 1976 that corporations first got the right to use their money as free speech. And then Citizens United in 2010 just further extended the Buckley-Vallejo ruling to give corporations even more power in their speech. So you can see that everything I've cited here is judicially. There is actually nothing legislatively that states that a corporation is a person. There is no legislation out there granting corporations persons rights. It has all come through the courts. But judicially, a corporation is a person, and as a person, they have the same constitutional rights that you and I have. And as long as they have constitutional rights, we're going to keep on fighting and fighting and refighting and refighting and refighting all of these issues. We have got to take away their personhood. You can sign the petition that says that corporations, that is for a constitutional amendment, the 28th Amendment, that will state plainly and simply, corporations are not people, and that money is not free speech. You can sign on your cell phones. I'll be up here at the front when we finish up here. You can sign electronically. I have an iPad, or we have paper and pencil if you prefer to sign that way. But please do sign that. The petition itself is not that important, but the petition helps us to build the movement. And that's what is important, is to build this movement. And it is a growing movement. In the last 2 years, there have been hundreds of local referendums supporting the 28th Amendment. In every single one of those referendums, the referendum has won in favor of the constitutional amendment from 65 to 80% of the vote. And that is in conservative districts and in liberal districts alike. In Pueblo, Colorado, which is a conservative district, the local newspaper was vehemently against the 28th Amendment, and they worked diligently and hard to defeat that referendum. And in spite of it being in a conservative district, with the local newspaper fighting very, very hard against it, the referendum won with 65% of the vote. So this is a people's issue, and people get it, and people understand. Even if Mitt Romney does not understand, we the people understand that corporations are not people. And we need a 28th Amendment to state that so that the courts can no longer rule in favor of corporation personhood rights. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
This divine mind of conviction. This divine mind of conviction. This divine mind of conviction. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All over this world, I'm gonna let it shine. All over this world, I'm